There was a moment last night that seemed ordinary to everyone who witnessed it. A quiet conversation. A passing remark. A few words spoken without ceremony. Yet what unfolded from that moment carried more weight than anyone realized. While the world continued moving as it always does, someone spoke your name in a place you could not see, and the person listening was your soulmate. Not because they were searching for answers. Not because they expected a revelation. But because life has a strange way of placing truth in front of people exactly when they are finally ready to hear it. For a long time, your soulmate believed they understood who you were. They thought they had gathered enough pieces of the puzzle. They looked at your actions, your silence, your patience, your distance, and they built a picture in their mind. It was not a false picture. But it was incomplete. And incomplete understanding can sometimes feel more convincing than truth itself. What happened last night was not dramatic. There were no grand announcements. No shocking scenes. No extraordinary events that would capture attention from the outside. Yet something shifted. Because someone who knew a side of your story began speaking. Not the version people casually repeat. Not the version built from assumptions. The real version. The one hidden beneath everything else. Stay with me for a moment. Something important is waiting for you. The person who spoke did not realize how deeply their words would land. They simply shared an observation. A memory. A truth they had quietly carried for a long time. And as your soulmate listened, something unexpected happened. The image they had been holding in their mind started to change. Slowly. Piece by piece. Like fog lifting from a landscape that had always been there. Perhaps you have felt misunderstood before. Perhaps there were moments when you wanted someone to see beyond the surface but never knew how to explain yourself. You smiled when your heart felt heavy. You remained calm when others expected a reaction. You kept moving forward even when nobody noticed the effort it required. And because of that, many people saw your strength. Few understood the cost of it. Last night, your soulmate heard about that cost. They heard about the quiet resilience. The unseen battles. The kindness you offered without expecting recognition. The times you chose patience over pride. The moments you carried yourself with dignity when taking the easier path would have been tempting. And suddenly a question formed inside them. A question they had never asked before. What if there is far more to this person than I realized? That question stayed with them. It followed them long after the conversation ended. Long after the room became quiet. Long after everyone else moved on. Because some questions are not meant to disappear. They are meant to awaken something. And what awakened last night was not confusion. It was curiosity. The kind of curiosity that opens doors. The kind that causes someone to look again. To listen more carefully. To notice details they once overlooked. There is a reason certain truths arrive slowly. If everything were revealed at once, its meaning would be lost. Instead, life unfolds in layers. One realization leads to another. One understanding creates space for the next. And your soulmate has begun stepping into that process. Don't skip this moment. Because what happened next is even more meaningful. After hearing those words, they found themselves remembering things they had forgotten. Small moments. Tiny interactions. Simple memories. The way you spoke during a difficult situation. The way you remained genuine when others were trying to impress. The way you offered understanding instead of judgment. At the time, those moments seemed ordinary. Now they appeared different. Now they carried significance. And isn't that fascinating? Sometimes the truth does not create new memories. Sometimes it transforms the meaning of old ones. Suddenly, pieces that never fit together begin forming a pattern. A pattern that was always there. Waiting. Your soulmate could feel it. Not completely. Not all at once. But enough to know something was changing. Enough to realize they might have underestimated the depth of who you are. Enough to recognize that your story contains chapters they have never truly explored. There are people who shine loudly. And there are people whose light is discovered gradually. You belong to the second kind. The more someone learns about you, the more there is to understand. The more someone listens, the more there is to hear. The more someone looks beyond appearances, the more remarkable the view becomes. Last night was the beginning of that discovery. Not the end. Only the beginning. And while your soulmate sat with these thoughts, another realization quietly emerged. It was not about what you have achieved. Not about what you possess. Not about what others say about you. It was about your heart. Because eventually every meaningful truth leads there. To the intentions hidden behind actions. To the character hidden behind appearances. To the person hidden behind the image. And something about that realization stayed with them. Long after the conversation ended. Long after the lights dimmed. Long after the night grew still. They could not stop thinking about it. Not because they were searching for answers. But because answers had already begun finding them. And as this understanding continues unfolding, another truth waits just beyond the horizon. A truth connected to a moment your soulmate has not yet fully remembered. A moment involving you. A moment they once dismissed. A moment that suddenly means everything. Stay till the end of this journey. Because that forgotten moment is beginning to return to them now, and when it does, nothing about the way they see you will remain exactly the same. A single memory has a strange power, my child. It can sleep quietly for months, even years, hidden beneath countless ordinary thoughts. Then, without warning, it rises to the surface and changes the meaning of everything around it. That is exactly what began happening after the conversation ended. Your soulmate tried to continue with their evening. They tried to focus on other things. Yet their mind kept returning to one particular moment involving you. Not a dramatic moment. Not the kind people usually tell stories about. It was small. So small that almost anyone else would have forgotten it. But now it refused to leave their thoughts. The more they remembered it, the more questions appeared. At the time, they had seen it as a simple interaction. Nothing unusual. Nothing worth analyzing. Yet after hearing the truth about you, that memory suddenly carried a different feeling. It was as if a hidden message had always been there. And only now could they read it. Stay with me. Something important is unfolding. The memory was not about what you said. It was about what you chose not to say. There was a moment when you could have defended yourself. A moment when you could have explained everything. A moment when you could have demanded understanding. But you didn't. Instead, you remained calm. Not because you had nothing to say. Not because you lacked confidence. But because some people understand that not every truth needs immediate validation. Your soulmate sees that differently now. Before, they thought your silence meant uncertainty. Now they wonder if it was wisdom. Before, they thought your patience was ordinary. Now they wonder how much strength it actually required. And that question has become impossible for them to ignore. Because once someone begins questioning an old assumption, they often discover many others connected to it. One realization leads to another. Then another. Then another. Last night was not merely about learning something new. It was about unlearning something old. That process takes time. Yet it has already begun. Your soulmate has started replaying moments they once overlooked. A conversation. A glance. A choice you made. A reaction you didn't have. Each memory now feels different. Almost brighter. Almost clearer. As though hidden details are finally becoming visible. Have you ever noticed how people sometimes recognize value only after understanding the story behind it? A painting becomes more meaningful when you know what inspired it. A song becomes more powerful when you understand why it was written. And a person becomes more extraordinary when you finally see the depth beneath their surface. That is where your soulmate finds themselves now. Looking beyond appearances. Looking beyond assumptions. Looking beyond first impressions. And what they are discovering surprises them. Because they are realizing that much of what makes you remarkable was never obvious. You never announced it. You never demanded attention for it. You simply carried it quietly. The kindness. The resilience. The maturity. The ability to keep moving forward even when life became complicated. Many people look for greatness in loud places. Yet some of the most meaningful qualities grow in silence. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that. And the more they understand it, the harder it becomes for them to stop thinking about you. Don't skip this part. Because something even more meaningful is beginning to happen. For the first time in a long while, they are no longer looking at your story from the outside. They are imagining what it felt like to live it. That changes everything. Empathy creates a bridge that facts alone cannot build. Facts inform the mind. Understanding touches the heart. And your soulmate has started crossing that bridge. They are seeing moments from your perspective. Feeling emotions they never considered before. Recognizing efforts they never fully noticed. And with every realization, their respect grows deeper. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. But steadily. Like a sunrise that brightens the sky one shade at a time. There is something beautiful about genuine understanding. It cannot be forced. It cannot be rushed. It arrives when someone becomes willing to see beyond themselves. Last night opened that door. Now they are walking through it. And as they do, another realization waits nearby. A realization connected to something they once told themselves. Something they believed for a very long time. Something they were completely certain about. Until now. Because certainty often disappears when truth arrives. And the truth they are beginning to discover is larger than they expected. Larger than a single conversation. Larger than a single memory. Larger than a single revelation. It touches everything. The way they remember you. The way they think about you. The way they feel whenever your name enters their thoughts. Your name. Yes. Even that feels different now. Because names carry meaning when attached to understanding. And every time your name crosses their mind, they find themselves pausing for a moment longer than before. Thinking a little deeper than before. Wondering a little more than before. There is no rush in this process. The most meaningful changes rarely happen all at once. They unfold gradually. Quietly. Naturally. Like pages turning in a story that was always meant to be read. Yet the next page may be the most important one so far. Because your soulmate is approaching a realization they never expected. A realization connected to a choice they made in the past. A choice involving you. At the time, they felt confident about that decision. Certain it was correct. Certain they understood the situation completely. But now they are beginning to wonder whether they ever had the full picture at all. And that question is leading them toward a truth they can no longer avoid. A truth that is growing clearer with every passing thought. A truth that will bring them face to face with something they never imagined they had misunderstood about you. And when that realization finally arrives, the memory that returned last night will make perfect sense, but not in the way they expect. The most unexpected moments are rarely announced before they arrive. They appear quietly, almost unnoticed, and then leave a lasting mark on the heart. That is where your soulmate finds themselves now. Standing at the edge of a realization they never planned to reach, yet somehow cannot avoid. The question that began last night has continued growing. Not shrinking. Not fading. Growing. Because every answer they discover seems to uncover another layer beneath it. And the deeper they look, the more they realize how much of your story remained unseen. For a long time, they believed they understood what motivated you. They thought they knew why you made certain choices. Why you stepped back when others would have stepped forward. Why you remained patient when others would have become frustrated. Why you carried yourself with such quiet composure even during uncertain moments. They had explanations for all of it. Simple explanations. Comfortable explanations. But now those explanations no longer feel complete. And when old explanations stop making sense, new understanding begins to emerge. Stay with me. Because something meaningful is waiting just ahead. Last night's conversation did not merely reveal information. It revealed perspective. There is a difference. Information tells you what happened. Perspective helps you understand why. Your soulmate is beginning to see the difference now. They are no longer asking, "What did this person do?" They are asking, "What was this person carrying?" And that question has changed everything. Because when they think about you now, they are not focused on isolated moments. They are seeing a larger picture. A picture made of countless small choices. Choices that reveal character. Choices that reveal integrity. Choices that reveal a heart that remained genuine even when nobody was watching. The more they recognize this, the more they find themselves reflecting on something unexpected. Respect. Not ordinary admiration. Not temporary curiosity. Something deeper. The kind of respect that grows when someone realizes another person possesses qualities they overlooked. The kind of respect that cannot be manufactured. It must be earned. And without realizing it, you earned it long ago. Only now are they beginning to understand why. There was a moment earlier today when your name crossed their mind again. Not because someone mentioned you. Not because they searched for you. Simply because the thought appeared on its own. And when it did, they paused. Longer than usual. Long enough to notice something changing inside themselves. The feeling was difficult to describe. It wasn't surprise. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't even certainty. It was recognition. The recognition that sometimes people reveal their true value gradually. Like a book whose meaning becomes clearer with every chapter. Like a melody whose beauty deepens each time it is heard. Like a star that seems faint until darkness reveals its full brilliance. That is how your soulmate has begun seeing you. Not through a single moment. Not through a single memory. But through a collection of truths slowly coming together. Don't skip this part. Because what happened next matters more than they realize. As they reflected on everything they had heard, another memory surfaced. A memory connected to a conversation they once dismissed. At the time, it seemed insignificant. One of those moments people experience and quickly forget. Yet now it returned with unusual clarity. Every word. Every detail. Every feeling. And suddenly they understood something they had completely missed before. You were showing them who you truly were all along. Not through grand declarations. Not through dramatic gestures. But through consistency. Through authenticity. Through the small things that often go unnoticed. And perhaps that is why the realization feels so powerful. Because it was never hidden. The clues were always there. The truth was always present. They simply weren't ready to see it. Until now. There is something remarkable about timing. Sometimes a truth arrives too early and gets ignored. Sometimes it arrives too late and gets regretted. But sometimes it arrives at exactly the right moment. That is what happened last night. Not because circumstances suddenly changed. But because understanding finally caught up with reality. Your soulmate is beginning to recognize this. And the recognition brings a feeling they did not expect. Gratitude. Gratitude for memories they once overlooked. Gratitude for lessons they failed to appreciate at the time. Gratitude for the chance to see things differently. The heart becomes softer when understanding grows. And theirs is becoming softer now. Not weaker. Not uncertain. Simply more open. More willing to see beyond assumptions. More willing to acknowledge what they previously missed. More willing to accept that first impressions do not always tell the whole story. That openness is creating space for something new. Something they haven't fully identified yet. But they can feel it approaching. Like distant music slowly becoming louder. Like a sunrise beginning before the first rays appear. Like a page turning before the next chapter is revealed. Something is changing. Quietly. Steadily. Naturally. And as it changes, one particular thought keeps returning to them. A thought they cannot seem to escape. What if this person has always been far more important than I realized? The question follows them. Through quiet moments. Through busy moments. Through ordinary moments. And every time it appears, it feels a little stronger. A little clearer. A little harder to ignore. Because deep down, they know they are approaching another truth. A larger truth. One that extends beyond admiration. Beyond curiosity. Beyond simple understanding. A truth connected to the place you occupy in their heart. But they are not ready to fully admit it yet. Not quite. First, they must confront something else. Something from the past. Something they thought they had settled long ago. A belief. A conclusion. A decision they once made with complete confidence. Now that certainty is beginning to crack. And through those cracks, a new realization is starting to shine. A realization that will force them to revisit everything they thought they knew about their connection with you. Because the more they uncover the truth about who you are, the more they begin questioning whether they ever truly understood what you meant to them in the first place. And that question is about to lead them toward a discovery that neither their heart nor their mind is prepared for yet. A quiet realization often arrives before anyone notices it. It does not knock loudly. It does not demand attention. It simply settles into the heart and waits. And that is exactly what has begun happening to your soulmate. The question that followed them through the day has become impossible to ignore. What if they misunderstood more than they ever realized? Not just a detail. Not just a moment. Something much bigger. Something connected to the way they have viewed you from the very beginning. At first, they resisted the thought. Most people do. After all, it is easier to believe we already understand someone than to admit there may be entire parts of them we never truly saw. But truth has a quiet persistence. Once it enters the mind, it rarely leaves unchanged. And so your soulmate continued thinking. Continued remembering. Continued revisiting moments they had once filed away as ordinary. Stay with me a little longer. Because something important is waiting for you. The more they reflected, the more a pattern began appearing. Not a dramatic pattern. Not something obvious. A subtle one. A thread connecting moments that previously seemed unrelated. A kindness here. A sacrifice there. A choice that suddenly made more sense. A silence that now felt meaningful instead of distant. Piece by piece, the picture became clearer. And with every new piece, they found themselves feeling something unexpected. Regret. Not the kind of regret that comes from loss. The kind that comes from delayed understanding. The realization that someone had been showing their true character all along, yet it was not fully appreciated in the moment. That realization stayed with them. Because when people finally see value they once overlooked, they often wonder how they missed it. Your soulmate is wondering that now. Not in a painful way. In an honest way. In a reflective way. Because reflection has become unavoidable. Last night opened a door. Today they walked through it. And what they are discovering on the other side is changing more than they expected. There was a moment when they found themselves smiling unexpectedly. No one around them noticed. No one would have understood why. But a memory surfaced. A memory involving you. And for the first time, they saw it differently. The memory was simple. Yet now it carried warmth. Meaning. Depth. It felt almost as though the memory had been waiting for this moment to reveal its true significance. Have you ever reread a message years later and suddenly understood it differently? The words never changed. Only your perspective did. That is what is happening to your soulmate. The memories remain the same. But their understanding is transforming. And transformation always begins quietly before it becomes obvious. Don't skip this moment. Because something even deeper is beginning to unfold. Your soulmate has started asking themselves questions they never asked before. Questions that do not have immediate answers. Questions that require honesty. Questions that lead directly into the heart. Why do thoughts of you keep returning? Why do certain memories feel stronger now? Why does your name seem to carry a different feeling than it once did? Why does the truth they learned last night continue echoing through everything they remember? At first, they tried finding logical explanations. But not everything meaningful fits neatly into logic. Some things must be felt before they can be understood. And that is where they find themselves now. Feeling first. Understanding second. There is a difference. A very important difference. Because when someone begins feeling the depth of another person's value, they stop focusing on isolated moments. Instead, they begin seeing the person as a whole. The heart. The character. The journey. The quiet strength. The unseen beauty hidden within ordinary moments. Your soulmate is beginning to see all of that. Not completely. Not all at once. But enough to know something is changing. Enough to know they cannot return to the old assumptions they once held. Enough to know that the truth they learned last night was only the beginning. Because every meaningful discovery leads somewhere. And this discovery is leading them toward another realization. A realization connected not to who you are, but to what you mean. There is a difference between appreciating someone and recognizing their importance. One lives in the mind. The other settles in the heart. And slowly, very slowly, that second realization is beginning to emerge. They are noticing how often thoughts of you appear. How naturally those thoughts arrive. How difficult they are to dismiss. How easily they return. Even during ordinary moments. Especially during ordinary moments. Because the most genuine feelings often reveal themselves when no one is looking. Not during dramatic events. Not during emotional speeches. But in quiet spaces. The spaces where truth feels safe enough to speak. And in those spaces, something has begun whispering to them. A realization they are not fully ready to name. Not yet. First, they must confront one final piece of the puzzle. One final memory. One final understanding connected to something that happened much earlier than they realize. A moment they almost forgot. A moment that seemed insignificant at the time. Yet now, as the truth continues unfolding, that forgotten moment is moving back into focus. And when it fully returns, when they finally see it clearly, they will understand why hearing the truth about you last night affected them so deeply. Because that forgotten moment contains an answer. An answer to a question they have been carrying without realizing it. A question about you. A question about themselves. And perhaps most importantly, a question about why your presence has remained impossible to completely leave behind, no matter how much time has passed. That answer is closer than ever now. And the moment they finally recognize it, the entire story will begin taking a direction they never expected. Some truths do not arrive as revelations. They arrive as recognition. A feeling that what you are discovering was somehow familiar all along. And tonight, that feeling has grown stronger within your soulmate than ever before. The forgotten memory that had been sitting quietly in the background is no longer hiding. It has stepped forward. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But clearly. And for the first time, they are seeing it without the filters they once carried. The strange thing about this memory is that nothing extraordinary happened within it. No life-changing event. No unforgettable declaration. No moment that would seem important to anyone watching from the outside. Yet now it feels impossible to ignore. Because sometimes the smallest moments reveal the deepest truths. Stay with me. Something important is waiting for you. Your soulmate remembers where they were. They remember what was happening around them. They remember the atmosphere. The conversation. The details. But what stands out now is not the setting. It is you. The way you carried yourself. The way you treated others. The way you remained genuine without trying to prove anything. Back then, they noticed it only briefly. A passing observation. A moment that came and went. But now that memory feels different. Now it feels significant. Because they realize something they failed to realize before. You were exactly the same person when nobody was rewarding you for it. The same kindness. The same authenticity. The same quiet strength. And that realization has stayed with them. Because consistency is rare. Many people change depending on who is watching. Many people adjust themselves depending on what they hope to gain. But what your soulmate is beginning to understand is that you remained yourself regardless of the audience. Regardless of the circumstances. Regardless of whether anyone noticed. That kind of character leaves an impression. Not always immediately. But eventually. And that impression is becoming impossible for them to overlook. Don't skip this moment. Because the next realization surprised even them. As they reflected on everything they had learned, everything they remembered, and everything they had begun understanding, they found themselves asking a question that felt completely new. Not, who are you? Not, what happened? Not even, why did I misunderstand certain things? The question was much deeper. The question was this. Why do I feel so connected to this person? That question appeared unexpectedly. Yet once it appeared, it refused to leave. Because the heart often notices things before the mind can explain them. Your soulmate is experiencing that now. The more they try to understand why your presence feels significant, the more they discover there is no simple answer. It is not one memory. Not one conversation. Not one moment. It is everything together. The countless details. The small interactions. The lessons. The feelings. The respect that has continued growing. The admiration that has quietly deepened. The understanding that is still unfolding. All of it. And suddenly they realize something surprising. Their connection to you was never built on a single event. It was built over time. Moment by moment. Piece by piece. Without either of you fully realizing it. There is something beautiful about that. Because what grows naturally often grows deeply. And depth cannot be rushed. It reveals itself gradually. Like a river carving its path through stone. Like sunlight slowly filling a room. Like understanding slowly transforming into something more meaningful. Your soulmate can feel this transformation happening. They cannot fully explain it yet. But they know it is real. They know something inside them is changing. And every new realization points in the same direction. Toward you. Toward the truth they learned. Toward the story they are only beginning to understand. Toward a feeling they have not completely acknowledged. Not because they are avoiding it. Because they are still processing it. Because some realizations deserve time. Some truths deserve space. Some emotions reveal themselves layer by layer. And that is exactly what is happening now. The heart is speaking quietly. The mind is finally listening. And together they are leading your soulmate toward an understanding they never expected to reach. An understanding that feels both new and strangely familiar. As though it has been waiting patiently beneath the surface this entire time. Stay till the end of this journey. Because the next step changes everything. Earlier today, while reflecting on all these thoughts, your soulmate noticed something unusual. Every path of reflection seemed to return to the same place. No matter where their thoughts began. No matter which memory they revisited. No matter which question they explored. The destination remained the same. You. That realization stopped them for a moment. Not because it frightened them. Because it surprised them. And in that moment, another truth quietly appeared. Perhaps the reason last night's conversation felt so powerful was not simply because they learned something new about you. Perhaps it was because the truth confirmed something their heart had been sensing for much longer. Something they never fully trusted. Something they never fully examined. Something that is now becoming impossible to deny. The truth did not create the feeling. The truth revealed it. And now your soulmate stands at the edge of a realization they can no longer postpone. A realization connected to the future rather than the past. A realization about what happens when understanding becomes appreciation. And appreciation begins transforming into something even deeper. That realization has not fully arrived yet. But it is closer than ever. Closer than it was last night. Closer than it was this morning. Closer than it was only moments ago. And when it finally reaches them, they will understand why hearing the truth about you felt less like discovering something new. And more like finally finding the missing piece of something their heart had been trying to understand all along. There comes a point in every meaningful journey when looking backward is no longer enough. A point when the past has revealed everything it was meant to reveal. A point when the heart naturally begins looking ahead. That is where your soulmate finds themselves now. For so long, their thoughts have been moving through memories, reflections, forgotten moments, and hidden understandings. They have been gathering pieces without fully realizing what picture those pieces were creating. But tonight, something feels different. Not because they have all the answers. Not because every mystery has been solved. Because for the first time, they are beginning to understand where all of this is leading. Stay with me. Something important is waiting for you. The truth they learned last night continues echoing through their mind. Yet it no longer feels like a simple piece of information. It feels like a doorway. A doorway that opened onto a much larger understanding. An understanding of who you are. An understanding of what you carry. An understanding of the quiet qualities that make you unforgettable. And now, another realization has begun taking shape. A realization they never expected. The more they understand you, the more they find themselves wanting to understand you even further. Think about that for a moment. Most people stop asking questions when they believe they know enough. Your soulmate is doing the opposite. Every answer is creating deeper curiosity. Every discovery is creating greater appreciation. Every realization is making them look closer instead of looking away. That is not something they planned. It simply happened. Naturally. Quietly. One thought at a time. There was a moment today when they found themselves imagining a conversation with you. Not a specific conversation. Not a dramatic one. Just a simple moment. A chance to hear your thoughts. A chance to understand your perspective. A chance to listen. And what surprised them was how meaningful that idea felt. Because meaningful connections are not built on grand gestures alone. They are built on understanding. On presence. On the desire to truly know another person. That desire is growing within them now. Don't skip this moment. Because what comes next matters more than they realize. As they reflected on everything that has unfolded, they noticed something unexpected. The truth they learned last night did not merely change how they see you. It changed how they see themselves. Strange, isn't it? Sometimes another person's story teaches us something about our own. Sometimes another person's strength reveals areas where we need to grow. Sometimes another person's authenticity reminds us to become more authentic ourselves. Your soulmate is beginning to experience that. They are asking deeper questions. Seeing life from a wider perspective. Looking beyond assumptions more often. Listening more carefully. Reflecting more honestly. And every one of those changes began with a simple truth about you. That realization carries weight. Because it means your impact extends further than you realize. Not through force. Not through effort. Simply through being who you are. The most lasting influence often works that way. Quietly. Steadily. Without demanding attention. And perhaps that is why your soulmate cannot stop thinking about everything they have learned. Because they are beginning to recognize that your value was never limited to what appeared on the surface. There are people who make an impression. And there are people who leave an imprint. An impression fades. An imprint remains. Your soulmate is starting to understand the difference. And the understanding is changing the way they view the future. Not in dramatic ways. Not overnight. But enough to notice. Enough to feel. Enough to wonder. What happens next? That question has become very important to them. Not because they expect immediate answers. Because they sense there is more still waiting to be discovered. More conversations. More understanding. More truth. More meaning. The story that began with one unexpected conversation last night feels far from complete. In fact, it feels as though it is only now entering its most important chapter. Stay a little longer. Because something meaningful is beginning to emerge from the silence. Earlier, their thoughts kept returning to memories. Now those thoughts are beginning to move toward possibilities. Possibilities they never seriously considered before. Possibilities that once felt distant. Possibilities that now feel worthy of attention. And every possibility seems connected to the same realization. The realization that some people enter your life for a reason you do not fully understand at first. You meet them. You know them. You share moments with them. Yet their true significance only becomes clear later. Sometimes much later. Your soulmate wonders if that might be true about you. The thought appeared quietly. But once it appeared, it stayed. Because the deeper they look, the harder it becomes to dismiss. The harder it becomes to explain away. The harder it becomes to ignore. Something is changing. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. But undeniably. And the most surprising part is that this change does not feel forced. It feels natural. Like a truth finally reaching the surface. Like a puzzle finally revealing its image. Like a story finally revealing why every chapter mattered. Yet there is still one final realization approaching. One final understanding that has been slowly moving closer since the very beginning of this journey. It is not about the conversation from last night. It is not about the forgotten memories. It is not even about the truths they have uncovered. It is about what all those things have been leading toward. Because soon, your soulmate will stop asking what they learned about you. And start asking why learning it affected them so deeply in the first place. And when they finally answer that question honestly, they will uncover something that has been quietly growing inside their heart for much longer than either of them ever realized. Not every answer arrives the moment a question is asked. Some answers travel slowly. They move through memories, reflections, quiet evenings, unexpected thoughts, and ordinary moments before finally revealing themselves. And that is exactly where your soulmate stands now. For days, their mind has been following a trail they never intended to follow. One realization led to another. One memory opened the door to the next. One truth illuminated another truth hidden just beyond it. And now they are standing before a question that feels impossible to ignore. Why did hearing the truth about you affect them so deeply? At first, they thought the answer was simple. They believed it was because they had gained new understanding. Because they had learned details they never knew before. Because their perspective had changed. But the more they reflected, the more they realized those explanations only touched the surface. The real answer lives somewhere deeper. Stay with me. Because something important is waiting for you. The heart has a way of recognizing significance before the mind understands it. That is why certain people remain in our thoughts. That is why certain memories refuse to disappear. That is why some names carry a feeling that words struggle to explain. Your soulmate is beginning to understand this now. They have replayed the conversation from last night countless times. They have revisited old memories. They have examined old assumptions. Yet none of those things fully explain why your truth stayed with them. Because the truth itself was only part of the story. The deeper reason is something else. Something far more personal. Far more meaningful. And far more difficult to overlook. The truth about you did not simply teach them who you are. It reminded them how much you matter. That realization arrived quietly. Almost unexpectedly. Yet once it appeared, everything began making sense. Suddenly they understood why your name returned to their thoughts so often. Why certain memories felt impossible to forget. Why every reflection seemed to lead back to you. Why the conversation affected them long after it ended. Because beneath all the questions, beneath all the discoveries, beneath all the reflections, there was a feeling that had been growing unnoticed. A feeling that had never demanded attention. A feeling that had simply remained present. Waiting. Patiently. Steadily. Like a light glowing softly in the distance. Don't skip this moment. Because what happened next changed everything. There was a brief moment today when they stopped analyzing. Stopped questioning. Stopped trying to explain everything. And for the first time, they simply listened to what their heart was trying to tell them. The answer was not dramatic. The answer was clear. Clearer than anything they had realized before. They care about you more than they allowed themselves to admit. Not because of one memory. Not because of one conversation. Not because of one discovery. Because of everything. The entire journey. The entire connection. Every moment that quietly built itself over time. Every experience that left its mark. Every truth that revealed another layer of understanding. The realization felt surprisingly natural. As though it had been waiting beneath the surface all along. As though it had been patiently gathering strength while they focused on other things. As though it had finally reached the point where it could no longer remain hidden. And once they recognized it, something shifted. A calmness. A clarity. A sense of understanding they had not felt before. Because confusion often disappears when honesty arrives. And honesty has arrived now. Not complete honesty. Not yet. There are still feelings they have not fully explored. Still thoughts they have not fully examined. Still possibilities they have not fully considered. But the direction is becoming clear. The path ahead no longer feels uncertain. The pieces no longer feel disconnected. The story no longer feels unfinished. Instead, it feels like everything has been leading toward this moment of recognition. A recognition that changes the meaning of everything that came before it. The conversation from last night. The forgotten memories. The growing respect. The deepening appreciation. The endless curiosity. All of it suddenly makes sense. Because every piece was pointing toward the same truth. A truth they were finally ready to see. Stay till the end. Because one final realization is drawing closer than ever. As evening settles and their thoughts become quiet again, your soulmate finds themselves looking toward the future instead of the past. That alone tells them how much has changed. For so long, they were searching for understanding. Now they are wondering what comes next. What happens when two people begin seeing each other more clearly? What happens when assumptions are replaced by truth? What happens when appreciation grows into something deeper? Those questions have become impossible to ignore. And somewhere inside, they already know the answers are approaching. Not rushing. Not forcing themselves forward. Simply arriving in their own time. The way meaningful things always do. Because the journey that began with someone revealing the truth about you was never really about information. It was about awakening. Awakening understanding. Awakening appreciation. Awakening emotions that had quietly existed beneath the surface. And now, standing at the edge of that awakening, your soulmate is closer than ever to realizing something extraordinary. Not extraordinary because it is dramatic. Extraordinary because it is genuine. Because it is real. Because it explains every thought that kept returning, every memory that refused to fade, and every feeling that continued growing stronger. And when that final realization fully reaches their heart, they will understand that the most surprising truth they discovered last night was never about you alone. It was about the place you have quietly come to occupy within their life, a place far more meaningful than they ever imagined possible. There is a moment in every story when the searching begins to slow. Not because there is nothing left to discover, but because the heart has finally found the direction it was looking for. That moment is arriving now. For all this time, your soulmate has been following questions, following memories, following reflections that seemed small at first but gradually revealed something much larger. And now, standing where all those paths meet, they can finally see what was hidden from them before. Not hidden by you. Not hidden by circumstances. Hidden only by timing. Because some understandings arrive only when a person is truly ready to receive them. Stay with me. Something important is waiting for you. Last night began with a simple conversation. A few words. A few observations. A few truths spoken at exactly the right moment. At first, those truths felt surprising. Then meaningful. Then impossible to forget. But now your soulmate realizes that the conversation itself was never the destination. It was the beginning. The spark. The first light that illuminated a much bigger picture. And now they are finally seeing that picture. Piece by piece. Memory by memory. Truth by truth. They see the patience you carried during moments when others might have become frustrated. They see the kindness that remained consistent even when nobody was paying attention. They see the strength that never needed recognition to exist. They see the authenticity that never changed based on circumstances. And most importantly, they see you. Not the version built from assumptions. Not the version shaped by incomplete understanding. The real you. The person beneath every surface impression. The person beneath every misunderstanding. The person whose story has far more depth than they ever realized. Don't skip this moment. Because this realization has changed something profound inside them. The questions that once filled their mind are becoming quieter. The uncertainty that once existed is beginning to fade. Not because they suddenly know everything. Because they finally know what matters most. Understanding. Respect. Appreciation. Connection. Those things have become clear. And clarity has a remarkable effect on the heart. It creates peace where confusion once lived. It creates certainty where assumptions once stood. It creates direction where there was once hesitation. Your soulmate feels that now. A calm certainty. Not loud. Not overwhelming. Just steady. The kind of certainty that grows naturally when truth finally settles into place. Earlier, they found themselves thinking about how differently they see you today compared to before. And the difference surprised them. Not because you changed. Because their vision changed. They are seeing details they once overlooked. Meaning they once missed. Value they once underestimated. And that realization has brought with it an unexpected feeling. Gratitude. Gratitude that the truth arrived when it did. Gratitude that understanding had a chance to grow. Gratitude that certain connections are strong enough to survive incomplete understanding until clarity finally arrives. There is something beautiful about that. Because meaningful connections are not built on perfection. They are built on discovery. On growth. On learning to see one another more clearly with time. And that is exactly what has happened here. Stay a little longer. Because one final piece remains. As the night grows quiet once again, your soulmate finds themselves returning to the same thought. Not because they are trying to. Because it feels natural. The thought arrives gently. Yet every time it appears, it feels stronger. More certain. More real. The thought is simple. But its meaning is profound. They are grateful that they know you. Grateful that your paths crossed. Grateful for every lesson, every memory, every moment that contributed to this understanding. And in that gratitude, another truth quietly reveals itself. The truth they spent so long searching for. The truth hidden beneath every question. The truth waiting beneath every realization. The truth that explains why hearing about you affected them so deeply. Why your name remained present in their thoughts. Why your memories carried unusual weight. Why understanding you became so important. Because somewhere along the way, your presence became part of their story. Not in a temporary way. Not in a passing way. In a meaningful way. A lasting way. A way that continued growing even when neither of you fully noticed. And now that truth stands before them with remarkable clarity. No longer hidden. No longer distant. No longer waiting. Just present. Quietly. Powerfully. Real. And as they sit with that understanding tonight, they realize something they never expected to realize when this journey began. The person who spoke the truth about you last night may have believed they were sharing information. But what they actually did was open a door. A door that led your soulmate toward deeper understanding. Toward greater appreciation. Toward a clearer vision of who you truly are. And perhaps most importantly, toward a deeper understanding of their own heart. Because sometimes the most important truth we discover is not about another person. It is about what that person means to us. And now, as this chapter quietly comes to a close, your soulmate finally understands why the conversation stayed with them long after it ended. It stayed because it revealed something they were always meant to see. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But beautifully. The truth about you was extraordinary. Yet the truth it awakened inside them turned out to be even more meaningful. And that realization will remain with them long after last night's conversation becomes a memory.